Now, I don't know what your relationship is with your teachers. I'm sure it's warm. But whatever, even if it's not warm, what they're endeavoring to get across to you is so important. And of course, they are role models as well. But what you learn from teachers and the influence of teachers and the importance of that influence just cannot be overly stressed. So I hope some of you will be teachers, because if you feel that way and you want to make a difference at that sort of part of life, go right ahead. It's really, really important. And some of you, of course, will end up being doctors or CEOs of large corporations or small corporations or small business. Maybe you'll be scientists or politicians, hugely important, that we need good people in government who are genuine leaders who have integrity and a vision and hopefully endorse peace as opposed to endorsing any aspect of warfare. Some of you may be engineers or architects. There are so many ways in which you can make a difference, and that you choose what suits you and your family supports, and you do what you want to do, and you enjoy what you're doing, and you will be important people in whatever level you're at, whatever you're doing. It's just a matter of making sure you do what you want to do, you do it well, and it serves the community and your family and your friends and the people around you. That's really important. You know, when it comes to school and learning and education, as we say in New York, that is where it's at. Now, of course, that is where it's at is not English, but then we don't speak English in New York. But it does sum up the importance of school and study and fun and playing and education in all its forms. Now, at the moment in your lives, the future is a wide open opportunity. You've got the whole world in front of you. And as I said, you start at home and you work out and you discover that dialogue is the way to go. So when you squabble on the playing ground or between classes or on the way home, whatever it is, the best way to resolve squabbles is not with your fists or your shoes, it's with your mind and your affection and your love for each other, which I'm sure is there. And it's a matter of dialogue. It's a matter of talking to each other and realizing that the other person may have a good point. You don't perhaps want to hear it right now, but you know deep down they're possibly right, which is always shocking when somebody else is right and you're not. But in recognizing it is important. And knowing what it's like to walk in the other person's shoes, as we say, is important. And it's important that this concept of understanding other people, of being tolerant of other people and their ethnic background and their perceptions and their religious beliefs, if you can manage that close to home and in this wonderful country of yours that is Malaysia, then I think that's a special thing to do. And you'll find that in life, as you go out and go to college and go on to do other things, trying to understand other people from where they're coming, how they are, how they think, what's their experience, and identify with their background and their experience, you'll find life will be much more satisfactory. And they hopefully will do the same for you. Because, you know, deep down, no matter where we come from, whether we're from Iraq, or we're from Ethiopia, or we're from Vietnam, we're all basically the same. Most of us grow up, we love our parents, we love our siblings, our brothers and sisters. We have the same ambitions for our families. We want them to be in good health and good education, to have opportunities. We want them to have all the good things that life can offer, which includes happiness and contentment. But sadly, the world, of course, is not like that for many. I believe the population of the globe now is 6 or perhaps 6.5 billion people. Again, I'm not quite sure, but I would guess of that number, 4 or 4.5 billion people do not enjoy the sort of life that you enjoy here in Malaysia. They don't have a happy childhood. They don't have opportunities. Some don't live very long. Many die in the first year of life or the second or third year of life. They don't have water. They don't have good food. They don't have good shelter. They don't have the basic human rights that you and I have always do take for granted. So we have to remember how privileged you are and how that people around the world live in poverty. And perhaps the most awful part of their lives is the poverty of opportunity. They don't have a vision or a hope. They don't see the possibility for themselves to grow and be nurtured and develop and become people with expectations of doing something significant or even having good lives of their own. And that's something you just have to keep in mind, how fortunate young people like yourselves are. Opportunity, you know, is everything. And when you get it, when it comes along, you grab it and you make the best of it. Now, speaking just for myself, as a little tangent, I'm always grateful how lucky and how fortunate I have been. I went to Trinity College. I then decided to be a volunteer, and I went off to East Africa as a British-Irish volunteer, sort of a British Peace Corps, I suppose you'd call it. And I worked in East Africa in a community in Nairobi, a community of poverty, many Somalis, many so-called colored people, unquote, in that community between Africa and Asia and Europe, and saw how difficult life can be and what a struggle it can be. And it was a huge eye-opener as to what life in the South, in the third world countries, can be. So maybe when you have time, and the time is ripe for you, there will be volunteer opportunities here in Malaysia, or perhaps in the ASEAN group. And I would encourage you to take that. Now, having said that, I realize some of you don't want to be nomadic, or may not want to be nomadic. You want to stay in Malaysia. You want to stay home and be close to your families and all your culture and all the things that matter to you most. And as the former head of United Nations Human Resource Management in New York, when we were recruiting people worldwide to work in the UN, in New York or worldwide, or headquarters in Geneva or other places like that, we always had difficulty recruiting Malaysians and Thais and Indonesians and Singaporeans, for example, because it seems so many of you attach such importance to being close to home. You like living amongst your own people and your friends and your culture and good salaries and family and even good food. But when the time comes, I hope you will take the opportunity to go further afield and make a difference somewhere else. I want to talk about just human rights for a minute. Now, I don't know whether you think about human rights or you're aware of what human rights actually represent. I suspect many of you are. I always carry with me two little books. One is the Charter of the United Nations, which is sort of, you could say, a basis of many aspects of international law. And then I carry this little book, which is the Declaration of Human Rights. Now, I happen to live in the United States, but I'm Irish, and my real home is in Ireland, and that's where I like to be most. In the United States, human rights are something that are not well understood. Americans think of civil rights, or they think of the Declaration of Independence, and they think of certain aspects of that. But human rights actually are a global concept. And of course, it's mixed into your own constitution here in Malaysia. But human rights, your library, I'm sure, has copies of the Declaration. Go back to 1947-48. They came out of the end of the Second World War, which is, a catastrophic occurrence. 70 million people lost their lives, if you can visualize that. Of course, one can't visualize 70 million people dying, but the number is just mind-blowing. And out of that, there was a recognition that we had to establish, the world, had to establish human rights by which we could strive to live and live by and work with each other and respect countries and sovereignty. And this little book has this. Now, there are many aspects, I'm not going to read it to you, of course, but there are some basic human rights which I think are fundamental. And those are the human rights that are not being satisfied in many parts of the world. That is the right to home, the right to housing, the right to have food. The right to eat and have food every day is a human right. The right to have an education, that's basic too. The right to have employment when you grow up and you need a way to sustain your families and people in the community. These are the fundamental rights, the right to have life. Now, when we have warfare, and I've seen a lot of that, and Dato Hamza worked in Saigon during the dreadful Vietnam War. He understands this so well himself, better than I perhaps, that when you have warfare, when you have conditions of warfare, what goes out the window first? Human rights. All those rights to grow up and have an education, to get a job, to have housing, to have health care, to have a future, that disappears. Life is chaos. And everything that's really important in that context of human rights goes down the drain, and that, of course, is not the way we want to have things done. So war basically destroys all the essentials of life and living.